Hey guys, and welcome back to Hardware Unboxed. Today we'll be taking a deeper dive into the gaming power of AMD's latest Ryzen mobile chips, which hopefully will be available in a wider range of ultra-portable laptops in the coming months. If you were specifically eyeing off a Ryzen mobile laptop for a bit of gaming on the side, this video will be for you. And I should say two videos because I am splitting this analysis up into two parts. The first part, this video, will be looking at how the Ryzen 5 2500U performs in popular multiplayer and esports titles like PUBG, Fortnite, Overwatch, and more. The second part, which will be coming in a couple of days, will be looking at newer AAA games like Assassin's Creed Origins, The Witcher 3, Shadow of War, and a bunch of other punishing titles. The goal here isn't to provide a whole stack of benchmark charts pitting Ryzen Mobile up against other laptops, because we already sort of know where this APU sits among faster discrete GPUs and Intel's super slow integrated graphics. Instead, I'll be looking at what games can actually be played on Ryzen mobile laptops, at what settings, and with what sort of frame rates and experience. There's going to be a ton of capture footage here, so you'll get to see exactly what it's like to game with a Ryzen mobile laptop. Before I get into the games, it's worth mentioning I tested everything on the HP Envy X360, a 15-inch slim and light laptop with the Ryzen 5 2500U inside and 16GB of RAM. There is a faster Ryzen mobile chip out there, the Ryzen 7 2700U, which increases the integrated Vega GPU shader core count from 512 to 640 for a lot of extra performance. I haven't had hands-on time with this faster APU just yet, but when I do, expect an updated version of this video with brand new data. The first game I'll be looking at is probably the one you'll be most interested in, PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds. And that's not just because the game is popular, but because it's well known to be a bit rough around the edges, to put it nicely. On the Ryzen 5 2500U, to get this game in the realm of playability, I had to set everything to as low as it would go. 1080p with a 70% render scale, so the game is actually running at 756p, along with everything else set to very low. Even though the game looks like utter garbage at these settings, it doesn't run well at all on Ryzen Mobile. I was barely achieving 30 FPS, often dipping down to the mid-20s, and that's not really improved by chucking the resolution down even further to 720p or any lower. Some games are okay to play around the 30 FPS barrier, but PUBG isn't one of those, so the game ends up feeling extremely sluggish and difficult to control at these frame rates. And just think, this is kind of what it's like to play PUBG on the Xbox One, which is a bit disgusting, to be honest. Anyway, hopefully with more optimization work down the track, this game won't run like a turd sandwich on Ryzen Mobile forever. The big competitor to PUBG these days is Fortnite's Battle Royale mode, and you'll be pleased to hear this game runs a lot better on Ryzen Mobile, which I guess isn't that hard to do. I set the game to 1080p native resolution with everything else set to low, and throughout most of the matches I played, I was hovering around the high 30s to low 40s frame rate. Now, this isn't the highest frame rate for a game like this, but there is room to reduce the render resolution down to 720p and hit that 60 FPS sweet spot. Even when playing at full 1080p, the game doesn't feel sluggish and is perfectly playable in my opinion. It's pretty clear that if you want a Battle Royale type experience on a laptop, it's Fortnite where you'll have the best time. And just before I move on to the next game, Fortnite doesn't run well at all on Intel's Kaby Lake refresh laptop CPUs. You'll struggle to get decent frame rates at 720p, and lowering the resolution further makes it hard to spot enemies, so Ryzen Mobile really is the way to go for this title. Counter-Strike Global Offensive is a game you can sort of play on Intel's 8th gen laptop CPUs, but it's not really a great experience hovering around 40 FPS at the lowest possible settings. But with the Ryzen 5 2500U, it's a very playable game. In fact, it's one of the best performing games I tested. Ryzen Mobile has no trouble hitting consistent 60 FPS at 1080p with the lowest detail settings, and often you'll see performance more around the 100 FPS mark. Without a FreeSync display on the HP Envy X360, tearing was a big issue as the game often hovered in the 60 to 100 FPS range where screen tearing can be very noticeable. However, the actual game performance here is fantastic, and there's clearly enough power in this laptop to play CSGO and have a lot of fun in the process. Probably the best game to play on Ryzen Mobile in terms of performance is Rocket League. This game runs really well on the Ryzen 5 2500U's Vega 8 GPU, so well you don't need to play on the lowest possible settings. Yay, I guess. I set the render detail here to the performance settings with render quality at the quality level. Bit confusing there, but that's the way it goes. And there was even some headroom for FXAA low. And of course the resolution was set to native 1080p. With these settings in play, the game ran comfortably at 60 FPS, which is what you want to hit with a fast-paced game like Rocket League. Now, we aren't talking about the 200 FPS you can achieve on a laptop actually built for gaming, but this is a great result for Ryzen Mobile. It's also the sort of game that suffers the least from playing at low graphics settings. You know, there's no distant enemies to spot, so a few jagged edges or low-res textures has very little impact on the core gameplay. The one downside to Rocket League on a laptop is it is best to play with a controller, so you'll need to pack one along if you're planning on playing on the go. Overwatch is a perfect candidate for laptop gaming because its engine scales well across a range of hardware. Here with the Ryzen 5 2500U, I used the low preset at 1080p with a 75% render scale, so the game was rendering at more like 810p. However, despite the lower than native resolution, Overwatch looks surprisingly good and doesn't suffer from playability issues resulting from the low resolution. The best news out of running the game at these settings is the frame rate. Overwatch runs mostly at 60 FPS with some occasional dips into the mid-40s, but in general the game is very playable. Like CSGO, any gaming laptop will comfortably run this game at hundreds of frames per second, but achieving around 60 FPS on a thin and light laptop without sacrificing every shred of quality is no easy feat. The final game I'm looking at in this video is also the game I'm probably the worst at, Quake Champions. This title is still in early access through Bethesda's website, though since last time I played, they've begun adding paid elements like additional characters. It's a fun, extremely fast-paced shooter that I just happen to be especially awful at. In any case, this game is very playable with similar settings to Overwatch, 1080p and a low preset with the resolution scale set to 75%. This game looks a bit worse here than Overwatch at the same settings, however Quake can be played at higher frame rates, in most situations at least 60 FPS. This is not a game you'd want to play below 60 FPS, so thankfully the Ryzen 5 2500U is fast enough for this level of performance. Looking across all 6 games here, the only one that's not particularly playable is PUBG, which shouldn't come as much of a surprise. Fortnite is very playable at native 1080p, while CSGO and Rocket League both provide 60 plus FPS, also at this native resolution. With Overwatch and Quake Champions, you will have to turn down the resolution a tad, however this is only to ensure a 60 FPS experience. The good thing here as well is most of these games don't run very well on Intel's UHD 620 integrated graphics in their Kaby Lake refresh mobile parts, so you do get a genuine advantage purchasing a Ryzen Mobile APU instead. Whether or not companies choose to release laptops with Ryzen Mobile is another question, but the signs here, in terms of performance at least, are very promising. As mentioned earlier, I'll have part 2 of this analysis coming up in the next couple of days, which looks at more graphically intensive AAA titles, including some surprising results. If you're interested in buying a Ryzen Mobile laptop, there are only a few available, but we do have links to check their prices below. Also consider checking us out on our Patreon to support us directly, and I'll catch you next time.